Do you wish that there were more studies and more study dollars for studies that would help autistic adults rather than try to fix us or prevent autism? If you answered yes to that question, you're going to want to stay tuned because the study I'm about to discuss in a very layperson type way is one study I think that goes in the right direction of that. I'm going to put the URL and the article name from which I'm drawing this up on the screen so that you can see it. I don't want to spend the entire time reading to people. However, I am going to talk about the name of the study itself. It is called Autistic Traits Foster Effective Curiosity-Driven Exploration. There are several study authors, so I'll let you either look that up by name or look at the article that I'm referring to. But this particular article, basically what they did was they were studying people that had autistic traits. So they weren't necessarily diagnosed as autistic or self-identified as autistic. So that's one important thing to know. And of course, as I've mentioned elsewhere on this channel, I'm not a physician and I'm not a researcher. So this is going to be a very layperson's read of this particular study and article. There was one set of limitations to it that I think is also really important to bring light to before we begin talking about the conclusions of the study. The sample size of people was 70, and they were primarily university students. So we know that there are definitely some demographics of autistic people that did not have representation in this study, and that is, in my opinion, super important to know. The age of the people in the study was 17 to 35 as well. And how they determined autistic traits in the study were to fill out a questionnaire called the Adult Social Behavior Questionnaire, which evaluates dimensions of autistic traits. And then the article talks about what those artistic traits are. So without reading the article to you word for word, I will put up on the screen the parts that I'm referring to from the article. However, basically, there are two parts of the article that we're going to discuss. The first of those is about curiosity. So the person who authored this study basically said, look, I'm really curious about how different traits in people can impact curiosity in learning. And autistic traits are part of that set of traits that he was interested in studying. So what they did with these 70 people was there was like an online game, and I'm not going to go into the details of what they did, but they were the autistic trait in particular of an insistence on sameness, and I'm quoting here, insistence on sameness, a trait associated with a preference for predictability and resistance to change. That people with that trait demonstrated a greater persistence in the task. They were less likely to abandon an activity early, even when learning progress was limited. End of my quote. End of me quoting the article, rather. So I don't think that necessarily this is a surprise to a lot of autistic people that when you're autistic, that, going down the rabbit hole and trying to learn as much as one can is something that marks a lot of us. However, the article goes on to say that people with this autistic trait in particular, and I'm quoting, were increasingly relied on learning progress to guide their decisions, abandoning activities only when learning potential diminished. This persistence proved advantageous particularly in tasks involving complex or probabilistic patterns where their approach led to superior performance. And then it goes on and it says that one surprising result was how participants with higher insistence on sameness showed a clear advantage when the task demanded sustained exploration, despite prior research suggesting that such insistence might be a disadvantage. So, and I'm stopping the quote. Okay, so I think this is super important from a real world context, and I'll circle back to my opinions on that in just a moment, but I want to bring out the other main point that I want to draw out as being important in this. So it says, in contrast, participants with lower insistence on sameness scores were more likely to disengage from tasks offering minimal, immediate learning opportunities. They tended to switch activities more frequently, focusing on avoiding prediction errors. While this strategy allowed them to navigate the task efficiently, it sometimes resulted in less in-depth engagement with specific activities. And I'm going to read directly from the article one last time. It says, when deciding what to explore next, participants across the spectrum, and here I don't think they mean autism spectrum, I mean just everybody that was in the study, showed a preference for novelty. However, their motivations differed. Those with higher insistence on sameness prioritized options offering greater learning potential, while those with lower scores, again in the autistic trait that we're talking about, favored options where they expected to make fewer errors. These differences in decision-making strategies highlight the diverse ways individuals approach learning and problem solving. Okay, now I'm done reading from the article. I want to talk about my opinions on this. And I hope that you will also leave some comments about your opinion on it as well, because you don't have to agree with me. So why this study really piqued my interest is because that the whole needing sameness thing, there's another part in the article as well that basically talks about how those that were allowed to just explore as long as they wanted learned a lot more and stuck with it a lot longer and weren't there, like their primary motivation wasn't to avoid mistakes. So I think of this with my own life in terms of rabbit holing, where if I'm allowed to explore something to its end, either an end of data, an end of things that I'm discovering, an end of conclusions that can be drawn, an end of questions that I have, what typically happens is that I see things that other people don't see. And I see hidden problems as well as novel solutions to various problems. And I think that what can really be beneficial about this study, and what I hope other studies go on to see if these results are replicated, because 70 test subjects is not enough, really. I mean, I think anybody that knows how studies work, even in a layperson's understanding, knows that 70 people is not enough. And only studying university folks is not enough. But the thing that really, it strikes a chord for me is that if this can be replicated, if the results can be replicated over the course of several studies, what I hope will happen as a result of it is that more autistic people will find gainful employment and keep gainful employment. Because that whole bit in the article about people abandoning activities when they thought that they would make errors, right now, there is an incentive in the current system, whether you're talking about education or you're talking about being on a job, any kind of job. It's a lot easier to get raises, get promotions, heck, stay employed if what we're focusing on is not making errors. I mean, errors are not a goal, right? But if people are given the opportunity to go for the novel approach, to go for, oh, here's a hidden problem that nobody saw, are able to go for, here, look, here's a solution that I haven't seen anybody else come up with, but it took me a longer time to come up with it because I explored this topic in depth in a way that no one else did. These are the ways in which it's super advantageous to have autistic people on a team. And I think that a lot of employers and the educational system make the mistake of saying, okay, well, if I have this autistic person that's in my group or on my team or in my classroom, that if they need really specific instructions to do an activity, that means that I have to keep them inside of a box. And they only should be doing things that have very specific instructions and a very specific goal at the end. And that may be what a particular job needs, and it may be what a particular autistic person needs. Okay, so if people are asking for this as an accommodation because they know that it's a need they have, I'm not talking about going against that at all, because individual people know their own needs way better than some stranger on the internet on a YouTube video. But for those autistic people who, yes, when there is something specific required, I want specific instructions, but can articulate to a manager, to a team, to a teacher, to a professor, that isn't the only way that the autistic person thrives. That I think there is a type of, I'm going to call it magic, that happens. I mean, myself personally, I like a job where I have a mix of very specific, well-defined tasks and, hey, every once in a while, I'm going to let you loose down the rabbit hole, see what you can find out. I do really, really well with that mix. If everything is, hey, go down rabbit holes, then you can't rein me in, and I basically would have the tendency to be on payroll to just do nothing but learn rather than produce deliverables, right? Like, I understand that there are business objections that need to be met when a person has a job, but I would hope that this particular thing would be recognized as a reason to keep people employed who are autistic, to keep people on teams that are autistic, and to give people opportunities to shine in ways that they might not be getting right now. You know, it's, I think, a hard thing for society at large to understand that if somebody has a flat affect or is a little bit more monotone or has very, very specific things that they're interested in, that they are a multi-dimensional person. And maybe that statement is too broad. Maybe I'm not giving people enough benefit of the doubt in society, in larger society. But I think the more autistic people that are allowed to have that combination, for whom it is the right combination, okay? Because if you don't want the rabbit hole thing, if that's not your needs, I'm not saying force that on every autistic person. But if it is a person's autistic need to have a mixture of both of those things, then great. We just, right now, I think, are solving a whole bunch of problems that the world has. So kudos to the study authors, kudos to the different places that are covering the results of this study, and hopefully it is replicated and studied more so that we can tell, are the results a one-off or are they something that broader across the population, people that have that trait in particular are going to had that same type of curiosity. Even if it's not, I think that autistic people in general are super curious people. I think we'd love to learn. So drop me a comment. Let me know what you thought of the article or on my take on the article. Of course, if you're enjoying the video, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.